Big shout out to the Divi Project, that's diviproject.org, and Monarch Token, monarchtokens.io, for sponsoring the podcast. Hey, how goes it? Ken Bozak here to talk about Bitcoin and Bitcoin accessories. And today I'm with my bro, Scott Offord, and we're going to be talking about Bitcoin mining profitability and all kinds of cool stuff like that. Scott, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience a little bit? Maybe let them know who you are, how you even got into cryptocurrencies, and then lead into like what you're doing now in the industry with your mining tools.
Yeah. So I got into crypto just by an accident, really, a few years ago, and I sent out a tweet to a guy who was starting up a new mining manufacturing company, and they looked like they can really use some help with their website. So my background being internet marketing and web development, I reached out to them. I said, hey, I think I can help you guys. So one thing led to another. I just eventually kept on working with that company for about a year or so. The company name was How Long Mining, and they were coming out with the Dragon Mint T1 model, and so that was kind of my entry into crypto. And I was, both feet right in, and so I've never really looked back since.
How long ago was that? When did you get in? 2016, 17?
Uh, End of 2017, right
Yeah, I was
when
trying
it
to think about
was,
when those miners were popping right there.
yeah, they were selling like hotcakes for really top dollar amounts, but and I'm not really sure how many people got their money back, from mining ever since then. But yeah, it was an interesting time in crypto for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely around the time people I even know in the computer repair industry were really getting into mining. And I mean, me personally, I'm not the gold digger. I was never going to be the guy who gets the pitchfork and the shovel and starts panning for gold. I would have just bought the gold from the guy who did all that. And like that's how I feel about mining personally. Like I just it's not something I'm into. Then you get the people that tell you, "Oh, I hit the lottery with a fucking Raspberry Pi," and you're just like, "What? How do you do this?" So it is really interesting to see like the potential that mining has. It's not just like the transaction fees. You have a potential to win that mining reward, and I've seen a few stories where Raspberry Pi has done it.
Yeah, that's interesting. For the most part, I've been involved only with ASICs, and that's where I got into the market, and that's kind of what I stuck with. But I know, other people like Voscoin. I watch his YouTube videos, and other people they're more technically savvy, and they're into GP.
That together.
Yeah, so the crypto mining tools is the website, and really what I was seeing out there was a lot of calculators online that can uh, give you an estimated profitability, but they were just very basic tools, and they seem to be all the same. It was just like this copy paste calculator that everybody can embed on their website, and it really didn't give you a very good idea of maybe long term what the profitability was going to look like for mining. So I set out to kind of solve the problem, and to scratch my own itch, really. Um, but then it turned into, just wanting to offer something that really helped people to make better data-backed business decisions. Um, so I invested a lot of time, a lot of money in developing this new set of tools. Right now, it's only for SHA 256, so Bitcoin and whatnot. But we're going to be expanding into other algorithms and coins.
That's pretty cool,
But
man. Hey, shout out
yeah,
to Bitcoin Bison. Yeah, I'll be at Chainwise, bro. I'll see you there. I got my flight already booked to Ohio. I'm already ready to give Crypto Crow a big old hug and get back to this with Scott here. So what is the next on your, I guess, like to-do list on adding? Like you said, it's SHA 256. What would you personally? Because obviously you started this for yourself, really, right? Like,
yeah.
what would you want to see the next mining tools for?
I mean, I've been thinking lately, maybe Grin.
Okay.
It was very interesting for me to see, Obelisk get into that and then back out of it and then into silicone. Um, And I think there's a lot of people that have a lot of questions about the profitability of that, and definitely with altcoins, it's very difficult to know if your investment is going to be safe or not, just because the difficulty can change so quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and you never really know how many of these machines or how much hash power the manufacturers actually have. They're doing a lot of self mining sometimes. So yeah, with anything that's not Bitcoin, I think it's very important to have realistic projections on. So I want to potentially do something for Grin.
All right, cool, 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 man. So, I never really got into mining much personally. Like I said, like I appreciate miners. We wouldn't really have a functioning cryptocurrency like Bitcoin without them.
Right.
But like, so what were some of the more or at least profitable? I would say like anomalies, right, with mining Bitcoin throughout like 2019. It's been a wild year. Have there been any more profitable months than not, or has it been less profitable to be mining this year?
Yeah, definitely. So it's been up and down. 2019 so far has been a wild ride. Just uh, it like I said, it really depends on what your electricity rate is, right? So there are people that had S9s, Antminer S9s at the beginning of the year, and they were making some good profit. If you had anything over, 5 cents per kilowatt hour or 6 cents per kilowatt hour, you can make some money. But for a period of time there, Bitcoin was down to closer to 3,500 US dollars, and it got really tough. So a lot of miners were selling their S9s and trying to upgrade to something like S17, the bigger, better, faster machines, so that they can make more money. Um, but knowing that really it's all about the price that you buy these things for and what your current electricity rate is. So there are people that were paying premiums to get these newer, latest, greatest models of miners, but they weren't necessarily watching out for their overall bottom line. So you really do have to time it right when you buy these things, and also just make sure that you have a really good electricity rate.
And a good
Um,
supply
so
there. I've heard people ordering them when it is the right time and they don't get them for 6 months, and it's about the time to
exactly.
return it by the time it shows up in the mail.
Yeah, so it's always a risk, and that's what I tell people. I'm always trying to tell people, hey, I can tell you what this miner might hash at, the tera hash rate, and what the efficiency might be. But other than that, profitability, it's all a guess,
Yeah.
and so the tools that I create really are to try to take some of that guesswork out. But at the same time, I also tell people, hey, if you just keep the difficulty at the same rate and you keep the price of Bitcoin at the same rate, you can almost come out with the same kind of calculations, same kind of numbers as if you would have used a calculator. So, whatever model you use for your calculations, sometimes it's a crapshoot either way.
So where do you see, I guess, like, right now people interest in mining? Is it, individual, I would say like mom and pop shop, or like, like you, me kind of guys just mining, or is it more like corporate, farming mining? What's like trending right now? Is it independent mining or is it corporate mining?
Yeah, I mean it's everything. Everybody wants into the game, but the deeper I get into this, the more and more large institutions that I'm seeing. So I mean, I've only been in this for a couple of years, few years. So I'm still getting to know my way around all of the big players too. But yeah, I mean, there are farms that have hundreds and thousands of these things plugged in, and they can get their electricity for anywhere between, uh, you know, just over 1 cent per kilowatt hour, maybe to 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And, these guys are making money, hand over fist. But it takes a lot of capital investment to get there.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I see people buying one or two of these things. and I see all the time people buying hundreds and thousands of these things. So yeah, it's definitely all of the above.
So, what are your thoughts on things like proof of stake? Do you? I know mining is similar to, the securing a blockchain as proof of stake is. Proof of work, proof of stake, mining, staking. Do you have anything that you stake as a alternative means to mining is, you know, I would say like perpetual, income because that's like what mining is to me. Like if you
Right.
have a miner, you have perpetual income. If you have like something that you're staking, if you have a masternode, you basically have a perpetual income. Do you have anything that you stake, or is this mining something that's just something you really focus on?
Yeah, mining really is what I focus on, but I did try the master node thing for a while, and invested in some shit coins and some shit projects. Um,
Didn't we all?
only to kind of pull out and just reinvest it in other things. But like I say, I really prefer just to provide the shovels,
Right, right,
you
right.
know, to help people dig the gold. And another way I've put it before is if I was a drug dealer, I definitely wouldn't smoke my own. I wouldn't use my own stuff. But yeah, but
That makes so much
mining
sense
really,
though in mining. It really does.
yeah, to keep a clear mind, But right now I'm mining on some equipment that, as a broker, I couldn't sell.
Mm.
So I bought it at a price that I thought was really good. And it ended up that, well, hey, why not just mine on this stuff for a while and try to get some of my money back. So yeah, I have become a miner out of necessity, just to kind of lower the risk. But yeah, it's I prefer providing services of helping people to buy and sell their miners, rather than to mine myself.
What do you think of platforms that offer, cloud mining, things like Genesis Mining or all these like,
Mhm.
mining pool, MLM, affiliate type things?
Yeah,
Have you ever got into cloud mining at all?
I tried it out just for the heck of it. I even bought 1 terahash of power on Bitcoin.com, just to see what it was like. And but yeah, I'd have to say, the closer you can get to actually uh, physically owning a miner and plugging it into a power source, the better you are. I mean, there's risk either way, right?
Hmm.
Cloud mining is definitely interesting. It's an interesting model, but the numbers really have to be there. And sometimes the cloud mining companies will cancel contracts, or they will price it just right so that they can make their money back, but
Right.
maybe might not. So it's really difficult. Cloud mining, I can't say I really like it a whole lot, but it definitely is a way for people to start learning and to start understanding the industry. So yeah, I'd recommend, hey, go out and spend a few bucks, get a cloud contract, and see what it's all about. If you really don't know much about Bitcoin or Bitcoin mining, try it. But I would say don't spend a whole lot of money on it, because what you really want to do is buy some equipment and plug it in a place that has the cheapest power possible.
All right, well, since we're talking here, I want to try to get one of these like hardships out of the way. I know that there's been tons of issues, we've all had to go through, but as a miner or somebody who's helping, people start mining, what are some of the biggest, uh-ohs, people really do and they're setting up their miners? I've had people, come to me and tell me they forgot to put the right, wallet address in, or they put a wallet address in for the payouts and they realized that it was like a wallet they lost their private keys to, something like
Oh
that.
man.
Yeah, it's so the wallet was paying out and they never. Yeah, it's so I've heard woes when it comes to these mining things, but like you've had more hands on. What are some of the
Yeah.
more like common issues people run into when they're getting into mining with like physical units in their hands?
Yeah.
Maybe we could help them get around that.
So yeah, I saw one guy. He was trying to start up a farm, and he had a warehouse, and he thought he was going to be able to put like 200 of these things in his warehouse, but it ends up he was only able to put 200 of them in because he didn't properly size his breakers and his his sub panels. And So that's definitely one thing to watch out for when you're dealing with this kind of electrical equipment. You really have to educate yourself a little bit on power and how it all works. So you're talking about watts and amps and volts and all of that jazz. So so yeah, you really do have to educate yourself. There's a lot to learn. It's more than just plugging something into an outlet in your wall. With GPU, it's more technical, but yeah, you can run it on a regular electrical outlet in your house, right?
Right.
But with these things, with these ASIC miners, they run on 220 or 208, or something like that, like what a dryer um, would run on. So there is some education there that you have to watch out for. Um, Other pitfalls, I'd have to think about it, but yeah, I think these days everybody wants to get in. They want to figure out how to get Bitcoin, and there's really to me there's one of two ways. One is mining, and the other is just to go out and buy the Bitcoin. And some people constantly are talking about, well, which one's going to be better, what's going to be cheaper to do. Some people like the risk, some people don't, and I usually try to stay as neutral as I can with my advice. But yeah, really though, um, I'm not sure about any other pitfalls, but I'd say learning about the electricity and how all that works is definitely something that people need to
That's
do if
definitely
they're getting
something I
started.
would have fucked up. I didn't even think that, like, I wouldn't even have thought, like, oh, this little thing needs as much power as my big ass dryer. I was
Exactly.
literally, I'm just gonna plug it into the outlet in my closet and forget about it. Yeah, I could have
Yeah.
definitely seen myself just not even, that would have been the first oversight, is the actual, home or, storage power supply to the unit.
Yeah.
Because I mean, at
And
one
these
point, I was
things,
getting free electricity at where I was living for a long time. I had free
oh yeah,
electricity since I got into Bitcoin. I moved
that's the way to
here
do it.
and I have to pay for it now, but I had it for free. And everybody, and this was in 2016, everybody was telling me to buy a miner. Everybody was telling me to get into mining. And I was looking at the price of Bitcoin. I was looking at all, like, the news and everything surrounding it. And my personal opinion, I'm no fucking financial advisor or professional investor, but I looked at the market. And I was like, well, I could buy the asset itself, or I could buy the tool that will create
Yep.
some of that asset over time. And I weighed my options, and I said, well, I think the market would give me better returns if I just bought the asset. And I feel like we're at that point now, and I want to see where your opinion's at. Is this the time to be mining, like buying these, miners, or is this the time to actually just hold on to some of the asset itself and wait for the opportunity to represent itself?
Right. I'd say both personally. It really depends how risk tolerant you are, but with Bitcoin being below 10,000 right now, I think it's still a great time to buy. Uh, and it's still a good time to buy miners because right now there are actually a lot of miners on the market, whether they're used miners or new miners. All the different manufacturers like Silicon, MicroBT, and Bitmain, they're coming out with these crazy powerful miners, and they're not really too expensive. And actually, there have been some people who have purchased these miners in bulk for the purpose of reselling.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I know for a fact that there are people that need to offload because, for example, Bitmain just announced that they're coming out with a 72 terahash miner in December, and they just purchased 200 or 500 of the regular S17s a few months ago. So they're just getting them delivered now, and all of a sudden, Bitcoin is below 10,000, and there's new models coming out soon, and they just need to get rid of these things. So right now, you can get a new miner for a decent price. Now, I'd say for an S17, if I could personally get an S17 for under $2,000, I would buy it myself. But right now, they're probably more closer to 2,600 to $3,000.
Mm.
If you were really bullish on Bitcoin and you think that after the halvening or up to the halvening,
Exactly. Good
things are
point.
going to start increasing, then yeah, I mean, it really depends on your philosophy and what you think is going to happen. But I would honestly say do both. Dabble in a little bit of Bitcoin, buy it, trade it, or hold it, and buy some miners. I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket. So that's really my advice, is to try to break it up and do a little bit of both.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely makes sense, especially when you mentioned the halving. That's definitely something I was thinking when I was like, forming the question was like, this is a very specific moment in Bitcoin's,
Exactly.
timing is this halving that's occurring, and that's definitely an anomaly that you have to throw in there when you're looking at mining versus hodling. And we're still forming this ETF. That thing kicks off. Holding some
Yeah.
crypto like Bitcoin is it's not going to disappoint you. And it's not just Bitcoin that can be mined with a lot of these machines. A lot of people that mine Bitcoin, they can switch from one blockchain to another depending on which one is more profitable. Is there anything that you do like that? Is there any things that you help people understand that this machine can mine X, Y, and Z?
Right. Yeah. So with these ASICs, they can obviously mine any coin. For example, the ones that are doing the SHA 256 algorithm, they could do Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, or BTC, right? They can also do a few other coins too, that not a lot of people are really into. But yeah, you can't switch to a completely different algorithm. So you couldn't mine Litecoin with an SHA 256 miner, but you could buy a Litecoin miner that is specifically for mining that algorithm.
I
So yeah,
have
that
one
and
around here
that's
actually. I have a Litecoin miner somewhere. I forgot where I plugged it in. It might be actually in my closet. It's a couple little USBs.
oh
They look
yeah,
like Raspberry Pis. Yeah.
yeah. So that's the thing with ASICs really is you got to pick the machine that you want to mine for, and they're not as versatile as the GPU, right? So that's the thing, if you were to buy Bitcoin right now, you could buy it right now at today's price. But if you were to buy miners, you would potentially have to buy now, and it might take you a week to get your miner. It might take you 3 months to get your miner. And then once you get your miner, it might take you a few more weeks to actually get it plugged in because your electrical or your infrastructure might not be ready yet. So, that's another factor too, right? So if you buy a miner right now, you're buying it at a certain price. If you bought it with Bitcoin or with USD, everybody has a slightly different way that they do that. But if you bought it with Bitcoin when Bitcoin was below 10,000, and then all of a sudden Bitcoin shoots up to 15,000 or 20,000, well, that miner you bought kind of feels like part
Who
of it
makes
too.
these things? Who's making these machines and then just selling them? Like, in my mind, it makes no sense for these companies to
Yeah,
sell miners. Literally, you have them in your facility the day it is the best to plug in and
yeah,
run. Why are they?
and it's in
Why are these
China.
companies? Yeah, exactly. Where they have the best everything for mining. Why do these
Exactly.
companies produce these and then just sell them and not utilize them themselves and then sell them at the
Yeah.
point in time where it's less profitable for themselves?
That's a good question, and that's an important question. These mining manufacturers know exactly what they're doing. They don't manufacture these things for the public. They manufacture them for themselves. The fact that they're able to actually offload them to the public is great for them because it reduces their risk. So yeah, for example, Bitmain probably is coming out with the S19 soon, and that's the latest, greatest model. Super powerful, more efficient. Right now, I think Bitmain's most efficient model is around 40 joules per terahash. You can guarantee that they've already been mining with this stuff for at least a year before they release it and sell it to the public. So you know that they've already been mining more profitably than anyone else can mine. So yeah, it's an interesting industry. Like you said, why not? Why even sell these things? Why not just uh, make them and create your own farms,
Exactly.
plug them in, and do self mining? Yeah, so I mean that is happening, but at the same time, these manufacturers don't have endless cash. They don't have bottomless bags. So they do have to diversify, and they do have to mitigate that risk by selling the miners. So yeah, I think the ideal situation would be if you had, $50 million or $100 million. The absolute best thing to do if you wanted to invest in Bitcoin is to start an ASIC mining manufacturing company.
Facts, straight up. That
Make
is
your
a
own chips, make your own miners, and start, mining the shit out of it. Um, and that's what I've seen a few companies doing this. They've invested a couple of years already trying to get into making their own chips. But even then, even like Bitmain and Innosilicon, all these other companies, they don't even make their own chips, right? They're getting them produced at a company like Samsung or TSCM, or sorry, whatever it is.
Nvidia
So
too.
yeah, yeah, and even with that, they have to order so many chips at one time that it's risky, right? So they might order enough chips to make a certain number of miners for themselves, but now that this technology exists and they have this 16 nanometer chip or this 7 nanometer chip, they got to make good use of it. So they got to buy a lot of chips, which means that they probably have to sell some miners in order to fund that. Um, so yeah, that's really the barrier to entry there. If it's time and it's technology and it's money. But yeah, I mean, if there's institutions out there that have a lot of money and they want to get into Bitcoin, um, I'd almost say invest the money and the time into coming up with your own manufacturing company.
Especially with the way I feel like we are, and I'll say we as in like the blockchain or cryptocurrency community is really pushing Moore's law to a whole new speed.
Oh
We
yeah,
are crashing through these barriers that we thought existed technologically, especially with physical technology. We are blasting through it. It's the incentives of things like this, building these technologies that can produce, its own currency, and with things like quantum computing coming out. I mean, that's like if Google figures out quantum computing and cracks Satoshi's private key, like bravo, good for them. And if that's what happens to Bitcoin and whatever, I am still happy because it incentivized quantum computing to get done, and from
yeah.
there we'll build something even better on top of.
You got to know that's the first thing they're trying to do, right?
Oh,
With
everyone
quantum
wants to
computing.
get Satoshi's keys, baby. Everybody who's anybody in that level of the technological world, man, they're all
Yeah.
striving for that right
I
now.
mean, what other reason for creating a quantum computer is there? I mean,
Yeah,
seriously,
no,
yeah,
seriously, nothing. I mean, you can't use it for porn yet, so it's totally useless. No, that's the only two things that are pushing technological innovation is like porn, and then now we have cryptocurrencies. I did want to get into these ASICs a little bit because that's your bread and butter. You
yeah,
talked about ASICs a lot, and well, what we've seen in the previous years is ASIC proofing. A lot of blockchains want to be ASIC proof.
right.
Do you see that becoming trendy and trending and potentially kind of getting ASICs out of the mining world?
Yeah, so that's a weird topic, because I don't really understand why an algorithm would want to be ASIC resistant.
Well, isn't ASIC miners proprietary technologies? I think right. So only specific companies can create those projects, those devices.
It's all about the algorithm, and anybody can take that algorithm and make a technology for it. Um, to me, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what technology is mining. Um, it it's about securing the blockchain and growing the hash rate so that it's harder to hack or to attack, right? If there is a brand new coin or brand new algorithm that has a very small hash rate, uh, there's always going to be the risk that somebody's going to want to attack it. There's always the possibility of somebody creating a bigger, better, faster GPU
Mm-hmm.
or an ASIC or whatever it is. So I think it's kind of an impossible task to try to make something that's ASIC resistant or whatever it is resistant, because technology is constantly improving and constantly changing, and it's only, to me, in my opinion, it's only a temporary fix. It's like a band-aid trying to make something ASIC resistant.
Yeah, it's definitely going to cost a lot of resources for sure, especially within the community of like the core team.
Yeah, so I guess there's different motivations behind wanting to make something ASIC resistant, but there's also completely other motivations to wanting to uh, make an ASIC to mine a specific algorithm. And sometimes those are at conflict with each other.
Yep. Well, speaking of conflicts, we can get into that too with mining because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of collusion that could occur with miners or miners attacking other miners. I remember Binance. I think even wanted to do like a rollback or something. I think it was Binance that wanted to roll back Bitcoin's blockchain, and that shit kind of worries me when we think of these farms and them having these sort of a monopoly on mining when it comes down to the hash powers that they contribute as a group when they group together. What are your thoughts on things like the issues of the argument of Bitcoin mining being centralized, right? Because of the cost to get in, because of the level of entry, and because of the contributors that already exist are very they're very powerful when you think about it compared to like the individual miners all added up.
Right. Yeah, so I mean there's a few different ways that Bitcoin mining might be centralized. One could be that, like, for example, there's a lot of hash power in China right now. So, in a sense, there's a lot of centralization in Bitcoin mining in that geographic region. Um, there can also be centralization in the fact that one particular pool might have too much hash rate at one given time. So there's that centralization there.
We've seen issues with it where a mining farm has flooded and it has fucked up the blockchain for a while because we weren't ready for that loss of hash power.
Yeah, and there's been speculation about exactly how much hash power can change if an entire mega farm comes online or offline. And sometimes it's difficult to see those fluctuations and to actually monitor it and to know exactly what happened or not. But yeah, Bitcoin itself though is fairly decentralized in my opinion, because for example, there's a lot of different people running Bitcoin nodes all around the world, and there's a lot of other types of devices that are coming out that are making it possible for just small individual people to run, teeny tiny devices, to large farms running, multiple megawatts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm personally not afraid of Bitcoin itself being overly centralized. Um, just because part of what I'm seeing, especially, is in United States and Canada, there are a ton of people still building farms and buying these miners here.
We've even recently found our own government has been mining Bitcoin for like 5 years on the down low, and that's using taxpayers' electricity pay. You know what I mean? So that's like the cheapest mining power you can get. And I mean, news has even come out of like FBI agents getting caught mining at work, or
Oh, right.
somebody works at a fucking power plant decided to set up some miners in a closet.
Yeah,
It's really interesting to see like this moonshine mining happening.
right. Oh, yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to talk about was you're talking about cloud mining, and then I said, hey, yeah, it's probably better to buy the miners instead of do cloud mining. Um, yeah, now that you mentioned power plants, that's the other thing. So, you know, if you have a lot of money, what you got to do is make your own mining manufacturing company, but also buy a power plant.
Mm. And have them
Those two
right
things
next
put
to each
together,
other.
exactly. You can rule the world. I think you could take over the world with that.
So that was a great segue into my next question. I was kind of leading into is like, do you see corporatization, right, of Bitcoin mining, where the Bitcoin mining facilities, the producers of the machines, only sell to legal entities, government agencies, much like you can't buy a fucking tank but the government can, right? You can't just go to Samsung and say, hey, I need a squid missile. You can't get one of those, but the
Right.
government can. So, like, do you think that that is a potential for, because the incentive is there for the government to want that, to be there, but do you think that that's something
Yeah,
they
I
could
mean,
enforce?
I think the government definitely wants to regulate things in general. I don't know if that's ever going to happen with the purchasing of Bitcoin miners, but you know, United States is only one government. It's only one location that mining is taking place. There's actually a lot of people are starting to put their miners down into Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of inroads to Venezuela as well because what's happening is people are taking these less efficient miners and putting them where there's supposedly free power. It's not free. I mean, when it comes down to it, there's obviously costs into keeping this infrastructure running. But like places like Venezuela, the government owns all the power generation, and right now they're offering power for free. Um, but we know that that's not really sustainable because eventually these power generation plants they're going to break down, right? And the infrastructure and the power lines and all that stuff is going to start breaking, which it is. Um, so yeah, I think if that ever happens in United States, these corporations, these companies, they're just gonna move their operations to different companies. You know,
Yeah, no, we've
there's
seen that happen, like you said, with Venezuela. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday who had to leave the country from a Excel trip. He has this travel blockchain company, and he started in the U.S., but basically because of regulations, had to leave, and is now fighting his way back into being an American company because he wants to be an American company, contribute to
yeah,
the American economy, but he's not allowed to, so he had to leave the country, and that is how, and especially with the Venezuela mining, like I've spoken to people at conferences that actually have made friends in Venezuela over the years to the point at which the reputation is so strong, they actually send them mining equipment to set up for them. And,
right.
it's sort of like, some, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like this amazing partnership of like the haves and the have-nots actually working together for once, right? Like Venezuela are the have-nots, American is the haves, and what we don't have is cheap power, the regulations and everything like that. So we work together now. We're working together, and I think
Yeah,
that that's another form of like technology bringing communities and the world together rather than separating us.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in Venezuela, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of opportunity.
Yeah,
Um,
Identity Block just said Venezuela has power outages daily. I think they have them every couple hours. To be honest,
oh yeah,
it's
yeah.
bad.
Like I think one person I'm working with right now is mandatory that they take their power off for 4 hours a day. So you're not running at 100% uptime. You're running at maybe 90% or 80%, whatever it is. So there's upsides and downsides to mining everywhere. You can, like you said, these mining manufacturers are in China. So if you have a farm in China, um, you can get your miners up and running faster and maybe cheaper. But you can also send them to United States to help decentralize mining. And there's a lot of people that like North America because it's stable politically. But then there's people that like to send their miners to Venezuela because of the potential increase in revenue that they can get. So yeah, everybody has a different philosophy and everybody's doing it differently. But for sure, in mining, it's all about risk versus reward.
I don't think people are ready to start seeing this in their 401ks and shit yet, but I have a feeling that you're gonna see Bitcoin mining in your 401k, your retirement plan. You're gonna see this. This is going to be a small allocation of bigger pools of money. Where I even think corporations, fuck, dude, Disney will have a mining farm. Why? Because why not? It doesn't
Oh, they
make any
probably already
sense.
do, right?
Right, exactly. It doesn't make any sense for Disneyland not to have a couple miners in the basement. And they're going to realize this at some point that this excess electricity that they're getting, they have really good rates there. These theme parks, these big corporations, these big towers, in New York City and cities like that, they're going to realize that, we have a really good thing going here. If we throw a couple of these ASICs in the basement,
Yeah.
when no one's here or less people are here, we can run them and we're good. We'll have perpetual, crypto income.
Yeah, and talking about that, that is happening in a sense right now with flare gas. You know what flare gas is?
No, but it sounds like something you get after eating too many burritos at Taco
That
Bell.
too. Maybe we can make a Bitcoin miner based on that.
A burrito shaped Bitcoin miner.
Yeah, so with flare gas, people are setting up mining containers, like portable mining containers, right on oil fields or gas fields.
Oh, that's fucking genius, bro.
And instead of these gas companies getting fined for flaring the gas into the environment and burning it off so that so that their uh, fields don't explode or whatever, they're plugging Bitcoin miners in right at the source. So instead of having to build out power lines to some godforsaken city, they're moving these miners right onto the fields and consuming the gas right there. And basically, instead of spending money by burning the gas off or getting fined for not burning it off, they're actually consuming the energy right there on the field.
And that's not just the oil fields. I've heard of actual power plants having to do this too because a good
Yeah.
percentage of electricity produced even by nuclear power plants is lost from the
Yeah.
beginning to the actual like destination it's going. And anything could be thrown in between that and you wouldn't see a difference on the other end at all. And I
Yeah.
mean, early on, I've heard people sneaking in and like not getting caught for a few years because that's how much excess electricity or power is available. And I didn't think about that with the oil field. Like that makes absolute sense, even environmentally, absolute sense. Use
Yeah.
it, don't just burn it off and basically waste it.
So yeah, it's a risk mitigation tactic that some of these oil producers are starting to get into.
I love the concept of like having it maybe out in sea, using solar power or like ocean. They have a lot of this oceanic like turbines that you can throw in barges, and
Yeah.
the perpetual motion of the ocean keeps those turbines moving, which is like electricity forever, totally renewable, totally safe, and just now you're mining at sea. And if you're smart, you're probably doing it in international waters, and you're a pirate of crypto. And now
Oh,
that
there
I'm
you
saying
go.
this, I think we might already have some Bitcoin pirates out there. So if you're mining at sea, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you.
Oh, that would be awesome.
But that's totally something that makes sense. These and that's the thing I was also gonna think not just corporate but even the power plants. Like we have the minor manufacturers that make the machines. They're selling them because they have to buy in bulk and stuff. But these power companies, you would think that power companies in general would just say, "Hey, we have all this electricity that gets burnt from A to B. We just throw it in A.2 right here between B, and we don't hurt
Yep.
anybody. And now we have all this extra revenue that we could use for infrastructure and things like that."
Yeah. And it's happening. That's starting to happen. And I think definitely in the next 10 years it's going to happen more.
I think we need to incentivize our
But
government to start mining. The IRS, the Federal Reserve, these entities of our government, they should be mining to produce taxable revenue, not from us, not from us, but from cryptocurrency, from
yeah,
contributing to Bitcoin. They could earn tax revenue for infrastructure and
imagine
things.
imagine that. Imagine if something like United States didn't have to actually tax their people because they made so much money off of mining.
It's not a far-fetched concept to believe in. I mean, I think that if the IRS, not even IRS, but no, the Federal Reserve, if the Federal Reserve wants to continue doing what they do, printing money, and stay relevant in a digital era where cryptocurrencies exist and blockchain technologies thrive, their only recourse, the only option they have is to contribute and start mining to print their currency. The same thing,
Yeah.
Blockbuster fucked up by not having an application. Yeah, the Federal Reserve's gonna fuck up by not having a miner.
Right, right. But they probably don't want to adopt the Bitcoin. They would probably have, some more
Oh no,
centralized.
they would adopt it and they would sell under market value to dump the price as much as they could, buy back the dip that they caused. That raise that they increased on themselves, they would just sell it again. That's exactly what they do with gold and everything else.
Yeah.
It's in their best interest. I mean, market manipulation has to be quantifiably thrown into the price of Bitcoin. People need to realize that volatility is Bitcoin's best attribute. Stop worrying about the price going up and down and crying about it either way. Volatility is beautiful. Appreciate currency volatility, because what we've only seen in the fiat volatility is a downward trajectory of like 50% every 35 years. So yeah, just get comfortable with your currency having volatility, because it should. Scarce resources shouldn't be bought with something that can just be printed with the enter button. I don't even think it's a fair pairing to say fiat or US dollar to gold pairing. It's not
Right.
fair. You can't just print gold and then buy fiat with it, but you can just print fiat and then buy gold with it. How's that fair in a mentality and in a way that people can be comfortable with? That is beyond me. But I mean, 100 years of programming, people it works. Just because something's, hasn't stopped working does not mean that it is working.
Yeah. No, I can't even pretend to understand how, the economy and all of that stuff actually works together.
It
I
doesn't
can,
work. It just hasn't stopped working.
there you go. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like if your car stops and I start pushing you in neutral and it's rolling, is it really working?
Like Fred Flintstone. Yeah.
That is exactly our economy right now, dude. It is Fred Flintstoning. We have these entities in our government just trying to pedal their feet as hard as possible, but we ain't getting very far, and we're gonna run out of that energy real soon. I mean, we just 10 years ago got out of what could have been a depression at the edges of, with the recession. And with the way that these interest rates are going and everything, with a $23 trillion deficit, we're due for some correction in our economy. We're due for it, especially with the
Yeah.
tariffs on all the imports. And dude, we can't even export shit anymore without being tariffed back. So the profits are of the American economy, especially with regulations forcing new error industries out of the economy. I mean, dude, the American economy, they're going to be begging for these technologies to come back in the next couple of years. I think we're going to see a lot of incentives, a lot of government kickbacks for Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin companies. We're going to see that. Silicon Valley
That'd be
does it for
awesome.
tech companies right now. If you're building a tech company and you want to do it in Silicon Valley, they will give you a kickback for building it there, for starting it there.
Yeah. Well, right now, governments they bail out banks and they bail out car manufacturers.
Could you imagine a day where the American government bails out a bank mining farm? Like, Wells Fargo's mining farm, blah 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 issues needs needs a stimulus from the government.
It could happen, man.
It could, man. I mean, Wells Fargo, or was it Goldman Sachs? I think Circle purchased Poloniex. So these banks are already buying up exchanges. It's not far fetched to think that these banks want to start buying up mining farms.
Right.
They have to figure out how they can start to keep existing in a financial environment that no longer has the restraints of the previous regulation. This technology and currency is never going to bow to regulations. I mean, the only Bitcoin tax I'll ever pay is the transaction fee when I send Bitcoin from A to B. It's the only taxation with true representation ever. And I feel like the IRS wants to get involved. They can become nodes. They can become miners, and they can get some of those transaction fees, and they can consider that taxation.
Yeah. Well, you just have to be careful which exchanges you're on, because if you have to trade fiat for Bitcoin or Bitcoin for fiat, you've there's only a few ways to really do that right now.
OTC, baby. Go to a local meetup. Find some
Yep.
guy in a suit that wants to buy some crypto without KYC. Obviously,
Exactly.
probably not looking to buy drugs and guns. The dude just doesn't want to get hit with 27.5% capital gain tax, and who's willing to buy your crypto off you. And I did want to touch on this because I see we're kind of wrapping up on time, and I think I was saving this because this is one of the more interesting topics, in my opinion, for crypto that most people don't speak about, and you have a very interesting perspective coming from the mining industry. Not every Bitcoin is equal. Bitcoin isn't all Bitcoin aren't equal. And people don't seem to understand that a Bitcoin, say one whole Bitcoin, right? One Bitcoin from Coinbase is not the same value as one Bitcoin fresh from a miner, a virgin coin. And a Bitcoin from a Silk Road transaction that has been blacklisted is worth way less than both previous Bitcoins that I have mentioned. So, like, when it comes to mining, a lot of the times people are considering the fact that they're getting virgin coin that do sell at well over market value, OTC, straight to the buyer. There's no transaction history. It just goes right from my miner right to your wallet. You send me my money. And a lot of people
Yep.
don't get the concept of this. Mining is producing Bitcoin that are more valuable than Bitcoin that are trading.
Yeah, and I've seen that a little bit. It's definitely not my specialty, but I was recently approached by somebody that wanted uh, to have Bitcoin mined directly to their wallet. Um, and the reason that they said was because they wanted to be able to prove to an exchange that they are in control of, X number of miners, and that's where their source of revenue was coming from. I don't know exactly why, but I think they wanted to be able to trick the exchange into thinking that that's you know where the revenue is coming from, so that they can get approved as a customer on that exchange.
Oh, that's interesting. That is shady business.
Yeah, I said no.
Well, Avi, man. I mean, but that isn't. I didn't even see. I love bad actors because I think that they make the space better. I really do.
Yeah,
Like, laws aren't written until dumb people do dumb things, and like that's the same thing in this industry, right? But ours are bips. So like we improve our protocols every time somebody fucks around and does something stupid or X, Y, and Z. So like we're an ever evolving industry because of our bad actors. If nobody was malicious for the sake of just being good people, technology wouldn't keep advancing into being more secure.
interesting.
So I appreciate you bad actors, especially those fucking with exchanges, because they deserve it. Hassle the exchanges, scam the exchanges. I don't give a shit. If you pick a pocket of a pickpocket, are you a pickpocketer? Maybe, but you still probably deserved it. I'm not a fan of exchanges, and I mean, like, that's another thing too, is like a lot of these exchanges have fake volume and things to that effect,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's why
like
it's like
95% fake.
right. So it's not far fetched to think somebody would want to fake some mining volume to get back at them, you know. So,
Yeah.
but that is an interesting concept. I never thought of that being a flex, really. Like, oh yeah, look at all this, virgin Bitcoin I get from my mining farm, and then use that as some kind of like resume or clout to get into a deal with somebody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Huh, that is interesting thought to have there. Hopefully nobody runs with that.
Wink, wink.
Yeah, wink. So, yeah, man, that's my thoughts on that. Like, I really feel like people don't realize that if they're mining Bitcoin, that as long as they keep that fresh, that virgin crypto on an external hardware wallet somewhere locked up, that it will be exponentially more valuable than the value that you see on the exchanges that
Yep.
Bitcoin is going for, and that's
That's
because
traceable.
yeah, exactly. Less traceable and less issues, right? Like there's a lot of issues with Bitcoin because of its open ledger. If I send you Bitcoin, you send me Bitcoin, I send it to somebody else, and for some reason we're all using, maybe like a Monarch wallet or whatever on our phone that has no KYC or whatever. It's a decentralized wallet, and then I go and send that to somebody who's using a centralized wallet on Coinbase. Coinbase may say, well, that Bitcoin at one point in time in its life, maybe 100 transactions ago, was used on the deep web for drugs and it has been blacklisted. So we're going to confiscate your cryptocurrency and we're going to shut down your Coinbase account because you broke the rules. Coinbase doesn't throw that Bitcoin in the trash, they use it. It's their Bitcoin now. They just can't throw that miner up and running and just, have it as a hedge for your investment because it's not the same Bitcoin. I mean, it is and it isn't. Virgin Coin is just right? It's just obviously better than tainted
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Yep.
So I guess to wrap things up, bro, let people know a little bit more about you, where they can go to get information from you, and what you're doing in the industry, how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, Ken, it's been great talking with you. So on Twitter, I'm Offord Scott, OFFORD SCOTT. I spend a lot of time on Telegram. That's my preferred channel of communication. But my website is cryptomining.tools. And we're actually coming out with a marketplace on there where brokers can go and list their gear for sale. And I help them get the word out to prospective buyers. So, yeah, really, what I'm all about is helping people to buy and sell miners, and also to help them get their miners up and hashing. Either help them find land or power or all-in managed hosting.
Yeah, guys, and like mining isn't easy. It really isn't. I mean, I played around with some. I have the Litecoin one running. That was easy. It was a future bit. If anybody's wondering, it's a future
Uh-huh.
bit Litecoin miner. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult. A lot of people end up. I've seen even on like Facebook, in groups where people bought these miners and didn't do the due diligence of the educational process that actually how to utilize these things, and now they're just stuck with really heavy paperweights because they weren't educated in how to actually utilize their investment. So if you are interested, please first learn how to freaking use these things and what they're about. So I would recommend checking out his website. These Bitcoin mining tools. It's definitely something you want to learn more about before you even get involved, right? And if you're already involved, go ahead and check out the website. Let me know in the comments below what you think of it. And let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. All right, Scott, I appreciate your time, bro. I'll let you go, and everybody, have a day.
Take care.
Shout out to my sponsors, monarchtoken.io, the complete crypto solution. Get it for your Android, iOS, or desktop device today. Don't forget to check out the Divi project. That's diviproject.org. One-click master nodes, one-click staking, and they got their on and off fiat rent with their debit credit card thing coming, I think. Anyway, we're out of here. This is the outro. Have a day.